On the last two content releases, there have been two new prayers added to the game. These two prayers are Divine Rage and Eclipsed Soul. And in this video, I'll talk about the testing that I did and my overall thoughts on these prayers and any potential use cases they might have. Real quick, if you want to go above and beyond supporting this channel, there are super thanks and memberships available. Any super thanks given will be put up in the next video that I make, as well as membership announcements. But if you're unable to do that, simply watching this video and possibly subscribing if you like this style of content or the other guides that I do is more than enough support. Anyways, enough YouTube selling out, let's get into this video. So as you can see, I am on the normal prayer book. I haven't been on this in quite a while, and I didn't recognize a lot of things in here, as it has been so long. Surprisingly, I do have Piety, Rigor, and Augury, and honestly didn't even know Sanctity was an actual thing, but it is for Necromancy, so it makes sense. And essentially what has been added are these two right here, the Divine Rage Prayer and the Eclipsed Soul. All Divine Rage does is increase all of your stats, and if I bring up this page by just clicking on my prayer points right here, you will see it gives a 5% strength increase, and this stacks with the Piety style prayers as well as the single stat boosters. So as you can see here with Augury and Divine Rage up, if I click on this, we're now at plus 13%. Now this is a strength bonus. This is not a flat damage increase, but curses only give 12%. So you might be thinking to yourself, okay, everyone goes to normals, we use these, bada bing, bada boom, we're set, it's more damage. Well, it doesn't quite work that way, because if we go one stat above, as you can see, it says plus 235, and I think with the tier 99 curse on, it is around 390 for accuracy, which at most high-end bosses is starting to become an important stat again. Things like Solak, not so much, but that is a 6-year-old boss at this point. The recent content to come out has high defense, and I think they're going to continue on that trend. Now this came out with Sanctum of Rebirth, but it does add up. However, not many people were using it at all. Maybe some speed killers were using it for a little bit of extra damage on top to help out with some type of grind, but the recent one that came into game was Eclipsed Soul. Essentially, this is the soul split of the prayer book. As you can see, it is an overhead prayer, and I can switch between my actual overheads, like for protecting from magic, ranged, or melee, or going back to Eclipsed Soul. And the interesting thing is that it doesn't work like Soul Split, where it's just a flat heal based on the amount of damage you do. How this one works is it increases your crit chance by 4%, and anytime you crit, it'll heal you for 10% of your maximum life points over 6 seconds. And what essentially you'll see is you'll see a bunch of hundreds on your character hitting you every single tick for a heal. And the thing they changed this past Monday is you can now flick between these and you will still get the healing effect, and the crits will be able to stack up and refresh the healing. So essentially survivability is a lot more sensible now with this setup. Now herein lies the first issue with using either of these prayers. It immediately writes off the use of necromancy or ranged based on the fact you cannot use split soul as a form of damage with Eclipsed Soul. And those two combat styles heavily draw on their DPM from both of those, necromancy more so than range, but they are still large parts of DPSing with those styles, so those are already off the table. What that leaves us with is magic and melee. So I immediately went to the place that I do mage melee Brid the most and tried it out, and that would be hard mode Carapac. And overall, I did notice the 4% crit. It was definitely there, especially during magic rotations and during melee rotations. And it was very nice to do, but the problem lies that you're not going to get as much defense from using Augury, Piety, or Rigor as you would with the tier 99 prayers. Now, in order to actually see the defense bonus, you can't have Divine Rage on, because you have both on, it'll just like spam these and you can't scroll down or any, but there are buffs down here. This may or may not have been confusing me the past 30 seconds to a minute trying to record this little section, but as you can see, defense here is plus 235, whereas with curses, I believe it is almost plus 400. And that little bit of a difference really added up on Carapac P4, where I am trying to go as fast as possible. And the other issue I ran into is the reduced accuracy when zerking. I only have plus 235 95, and I was not 100% accurate on Maj Aura using Champion Ring as a swap, and the tier 100 upgrade, I was only sitting around 94%, whereas on curses, I have 100% accuracy. It's not even a question. So what this prayer setup boils down to is if there is a boss that you use either melee or magic at, and have zero problems with survivability and want to go to a prayer setup that gives slightly more damage for a healing reduction, then this is definitely something to consider. Now, something fun you can do with this whole prayer setup is if I go into my bank here and I grab a handy dandy amulet of zealots, most people only remember zealots working with the curses that you have to build up over time to get a lot of damage increase. However, it does work with single stat boosting prayers here in the normal prayer book. So if I go ahead and equip my zealots here and I put on my magic preset, as you can see, I have the steel skin, I have overcharge mystic might on with divine rage. My magic strength is plus 21%. Now this is not an 8% DPS increase over the augury setup. That's not really how strength bonuses work. They're factored in and they are important, but it's not a flat DPM increase of that proportion. However, if you want to go full tilt on magic DPM, what you can do is use your zealots with the single stat boosters and have a quick prayer setup. And then when you want to use your EOFs, you could switch to something like augury, so that is still boosted, because when you take the zealots off, if I just turn my quick prayers on again and remove these zealots, put this on, it is plus 11%, which is worse than curses. So using your EOFs with this setup is very tricky, as you do have to swap to augury for that setup. Now, to me, this is more of a technicality best in slot. I don't see many people using this, and I'll get into why now. Any boss that you would theoretically magic camp at this point in game is most likely going to have some type of defense requirement, like Sanctum of Rebirth, for example. The last boss I would not bring this setup at because you need all of the accuracy you can get. In fact, I think you have to G-staff with tier 100s just to get 100% while you're on Maniacal and using Channeler's Ring. Something like Rago, where people might still mage camp. I think everyone ranges now, and people range Sanctum. The one high-end use case I can think of this being useful at is 4-man Solak, where the kills are going so fast that you're just not taking as many auto attacks as someone who is soloing. And I could see it working because you're boosting your melee and your magic damage. I don't think they would go as far as using the Zealots method to boost damage more. I think they would probably just settle for using the Piety prayers and just getting the extra 4% crit chance from Eclipsed Soul, or maybe something like Solo ED1 where you're using magic melee anyways, and it gives you extra crit chance, which is very nice for AoE damage, especially when using Meteor Strike or Hurricane or Dragon Two-Hander or Dragon Halberd or G-Chain Omni or literally anything. And those are honestly the two use cases I can think of, because anywhere else you might want to try using magic on a setup like this, range has just been dominating it for a while now. The other use case I could see this being useful for is if you're starting a fresh account and you have some decent stats. These prayers are very cheap and punch well above their pay grade as far as cost to performance is concerned. So say you have 85 prayer and you went ahead and did the quests in order to have the piety prayers. I could see this being useful there as a cheap set of prayers that can do a lot of damage and keep you somewhat survivable, at least a lot more survivable than normals have been in the past without this form of passive healing. But that also assumes a crit build where you're getting maximal number of crits to actually get some decent healing. So I still see it being decent for a like mid-level player just trying to play the game and they haven't gotten curses yet. Or for top-end PVM, I only see this being useful at potentially Solak, but survivability is questionable there at best, and maybe ED1 farming, but not too many people are doing that right now because scales are below a mil a pop. The only other use case I can think of is maybe some type of niche speed killing setup, or if you need to farm out ED3 and you really like using magic, because AoE has gotten a lot stronger with magic with the T95s, the dual wield ones anyway. You could easily farm out ED3 using this setup and probably getting a little bit faster faster run times. Although most use cases, if I'm just going for KPH and I'm using magic, I probably would just opt for another combat style, or I would just go with the simplicity of having Soul Split saving me every 5 seconds. But if you can think of a use case where you would want to use this setup with either magic or melee, feel free to leave it in the comments below. If you have an experience using these prayers somewhere else, feel free to let me know in the comments below. But I believe I have yapped long enough about these prayers. Thank you all for watching. Your viewership is greatly appreciated. Have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon, nighttime, whatever it is, wherever you are, and I will see you next time for the next video. Peace.